And welcome back to another episode of Red State Blues. This is episode number 30.
Whoop whoop!
Yeah, we're back with more. I haven't said this in a while. News and views from the middle of the mitten. I'm Ben. And,
I'm Melanie.
Yep. Here with Melanie, and yeah, we're just trying out some. I'm trying out today some new technology on the recording end of it. At least attempting to. It seems to be working better. I'm hoping that I'm still using a GarageBand on a MacBook Pro, but I'm using the Noise Gate, and I actually have we actually got some headphones working and stuff like that finally, so we can actually kind of hear the sound a little bit better as we're doing it. I'm hoping to reduce a little bit of the background noise. Even though that's like half the fun sometimes, I know, like hearing everybody run around in the background, but like I don't know if that's actually gonna. I don't know if we're gonna really be able to reduce it or not. Hell, we might even increase the background noise. I don't know, but it's fun to play with the settings anyway. Sorry, that's all technical stuff that probably nobody cares about.
I'm going to sleep now.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. That really has nothing to do with anything. Podcast. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah,
but we haven't done an episode I think in like a month or so again.
Yeah.
Right, and
I can't believe that it's our 30th episode already.
I know I can't actually. I know, right?
Last year we didn't know whether it was going to go anywhere.
No,
right?
I didn't think it was going to go. I didn't even know. Could have just done one episode and said fuck it. But like instead we're just I don't know, we're keeping it going. I mean, I know we had like some shifts in the format, and we don't do them regularly enough. And I wish, believe me, that I could do it. It's frustrating to hear all the like the billion other podcasts, and I listen to quite a few, but it's just like, man, they just come out like clockwork every week, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm very envious of that. And I just wish, you know, if it was a different point in our life, I'm sure we
could have banged them out.
Could have easily banged them right out.
Yeah, but with
like
kids
that.
and
with kids, jobs.
Yep.
Yeah.
We had a lot of responsibilities.
It's impossible. And this requires, obviously for us, it requires getting a babysitter. You know what I mean? Finding a time. Well, obviously finding time when you're not working, finding time when you can get a babysitter, finding a time, you know, when they're available, lining everything all up. Like the stars basically have to align. So that's why this is just, it's going to continue to be highly irregular when we release episodes. I have no intention at all myself of stopping this though at all. I want to just keep doing it. I think it's something that's good for me and good for Melanie, good for the community, good for everybody. You know, like we need to talk about things that are weighing on us in a forum. Right, that's. I feel I can be much more free. I'll put it that way. Much more free to just discuss things. Like you can't really just, even in the context of family and friends, you know, necessarily. But I mean, sometimes you can. But I mean, in the context of work, you definitely can't. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like it's good to actually have an outlet. You know, where we can actually. It's good to take advantage of that. You know.
It's good to let other people in on our little discussions, because not always do we agree. And like, I really wish if you are listening out there, you would just email us, drop us a line, drop us a comment on Facebook, because we really would be interested in what you think of our podcast. What do you think about the issues we're talking about? I think that's important. So everybody gets a spot at the table, I guess, you know?
Yeah. I think it's sort of, as Michael Moore was kind of, he says on the beginning of his podcast in every episode, which actually I haven't listened to his podcast in a while, but, you know, it's the democratization of audio and everything like that. And I'm like, I'm a big believer in that, you know, like it needs to be spread out. Like it used to be, like in the 1980s and 90s, it was just like this was just fantasy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The idea that anybody could just kind of hop out there and just get their point of view out there was insane. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That was the sole purveyor of corporations.
Right.
You know, like it was just, or if you're just rich, you
right.
know, like that.
If you're rich and you could have the equipment, then you could have your very own
you
late
could buy
night
a
cable show.
You could buy a license or get on cable. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was never something that anybody could just do. And I think that that's the groundbreaking thing, is like where anybody is allowed to do it now. And I think that maybe the internet, that's where the internet's at its best, is anybody and everybody getting out there. It's not like kind of, it feels like sometimes it's controlled by a handful of major corporations like Facebook and Twitter and whatnot.
Yep.
But really, the best part about the internet is sort of in the beginnings of the internet, and now I think too, like it's like everybody can get out there. Everybody can do whatever they want, start their own podcast, you know, or start their own website, which is so silly to think about now. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have my own website, but in reality, that's just a free form, you know, a free flow of ideas, and just the absolute freedom of it is great, I think.
I agree.
And that would take you out of your, you know, little area, little part of the world, and get you out to a bigger audience. Anyway, I think we really wanted to talk about African American history today a little bit. Oh yeah, this is African American History Month too, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Anyway, and that's just speaking of. But I think that we started watching the 1619 Project, which is on Hulu, which I am a little familiar with, but not very much. I've heard of it. It's a series of articles on the New York Times Magazine, and I think I read something about it over the past couple of years. I think it started like in 2018, 2019, something like that. It's all about really changing how we look at American history.
Right.
Which I didn't know that before just a little while ago here.
Okay, let's rewind a little bit. So the history we were taught when we were growing up. How much did you learn about African Americans? Any African Americans?
Well, yeah, I learned that they were slaves. I learned that they were slaves.
I learned about slaves. I heard about Martin Luther King, I believe, in school.
Yep, obviously Martin Luther King.
Who else?
In high school,
or like in formative years, not in college.
Yeah, not in college.
College doesn't count because not everybody goes
Definitely
to college.
Learned that the Civil War was fought. That Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Mm-hmm. I honestly don't remember learning much else.
Me either.
So
it's sort of like Native Americans.
Not until I got to college. I'm not going to say, you know, when I get to college that opened up everything. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah. That was very, very limited. I'm not going to say that there wasn't an occasional teacher who would talk about it more, though. I mean, I'm sure there was, but
I think I might have had a teacher mention, you know, Harriet
Frederick
Tubman.
Douglass, maybe, or
Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad briefly, but yeah. So what it is the effort to include people like Ruby Bridges, people like Harriet Tubman, people like Webb Du Bois.
Well, I think it's
these are people that are people you can look up to, people that were impacted history a great deal, in the history that nobody ever learns about. It isn't about changing all of history to some other thing. I think people are mistaken.
I think it's completely about changing how we teach and view American history.
Let's be fair.
I think that it includes the things that you said. The reason why it's called the 1619 Project is saying that we really need to start American history in 1619, not like, I don't know, 1776 or whatever.
Correct.
So that year was the year that the first slaves were sold to the settlers at the time, the English settlers in Jamestown, I believe, and so that would have been very, very early on during the settlement by Anglo people of this continent, and I think the slaves were sold by the Dutch, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's called the 1619 Project. Is we need to go back further, like hundreds of years before the American Revolution, to look at the history of the colonies, to look at the history of the continent, really, and to look at American history, to understand American history. You know, one of the things they were bringing up, and there was just an article I just read about this, which is making the rounds all over on the internet, and it was just about how one of the biggest myths about the American Revolution is that we were fighting for freedom, and I think if you look at that from the black perspective, it's the opposite of that. In fact, the governor of Virginia, the British governor of Virginia, apparently insulted all the white landowning, slave-owning people by saying he would free the slaves if they would fight for the British.
Yep.
In the Revolutionary War, and fight for the Loyalists, that would be. And that's incredible. You know what I mean? And that actually kind of, if you think about that, that kind of makes America the villain from that perspective, anyway. I'm not really saying that has anything to do with Michigan, obviously, but because Michigan didn't exist as a state then or anything like that, but it does have to do with these settlers, and it does have to do with it. It's like, I think that like maybe what's being taught here is that institutional racism and everything like that is baked in. It's like baked into the foundation of the country.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like just it's central.
And we need it.
Like so, defense of slavery was the founding, one of the major regions. The South, at least, she's arguing that the writer of this and everything is arguing that the South, that's the reason why the American Revolutionary War was even won. Right. Was defense of slavery, was to stop what they viewed as the British that were going to free the slaves. They desperately did not want that.
Right. And listen, we need to actually come face to face with this as a country. I mean, we need to have a come to Jesus moment. We need to realize and acknowledge all the things that our country was founded on. And you know what? Maybe the founding fathers weren't smart about everything. And they were people of their time. And we know better now. And we should change things for the better now. Like, we know that we're all the same humans. There really isn't any difference. Race is a social construct with real consequences.
Well, I mean, race is as real as you want it to be, I guess. So it's you know what I mean. It's not necessarily. It depends on your culture, but it definitely exists in our culture, and that's the part that we need to realize.
And it's institutionalized here.
Yes,
like,
it's baked. Totally it's baked into it. That's what I was trying to say.
Yep.
But now the writer of the 1619 Project, the founder of it, there is Nicole Hannah Jones. That's her name. Just so everybody's aware. I just wanted to get that in there. She started writing that apparently in August of 2019. So, and that was to commemorate the anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in Virginia. So it was the 400th anniversary there. Yeah. So that's anyway. I just think that's amazing, and the reason I kind of bring this up is at this point there's also this like huge movement among the right. It's kind of, I hate to say that, but I feel like it might be a backlash a bit to the 1619 Project. So we're finding out more, or we're trying to spread the word about our own history. Historians, and the thing is, historians don't disagree with her. This isn't like controversial. Nope. Some of the stuff about the Americans fighting to defend slavery, like that's not a controversy among academic circles.
Because there's actual documented evidence. Yeah.
But what has happened is now, I think, yes, there's tons of sources.
Original sources.
Original primary sources written by white people saying that they would fight to the death to defend slavery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So during we're not talking about the Civil War. We're talking about the American Revolution.
Correct.
So anyway, what's happened? I think if you read the internet much, get out there, is that there's been a massive backlash to all of this on the right. They're calling things. They're attacking critical race theory. What they're calling critical race theory, I'll say. This is not the actual definition of... Basically what's happened is critical race theory, for the far right at least, has become to mean any African-American history.
Any wokeness, any African-American history.
It's whatever they perceive as wokeness.
Any
liberal...
But I don't think
that's even...
Hullabaloo-ness.
I just think that what they perceive as African-American history is now just being taken out.
Yep.
In many places. So... Critical race theory itself is you got that, sorry.
Yeah, I want to just interject real quick with the actual definition here. Critical race theory is a cross-disciplinary examination by social and civil rights scholars and activists of how laws, social and political movements, and media shape and are shaped by social conceptions of race and ethnicity. Goals include challenging all mainstream and alternative views of racism and racial justice, including conservative, liberal, and progressive. The word critical in the name is an academic reference to critical thinking, critical theory, and scholarly criticism, rather than criticizing or blaming people. So this is something that you wouldn't even know about unless you specialized in this in college.
It's like a
they
graduate
do not
level.
And have not ever taught this in schools.
No. Okay, so basically, going back to what we were just talking about, so the definition of critical race theory is something incredibly complex and mundane, really. Actually, it's nothing. But what Republicans are doing, seemingly, or I'm not sure if it's Republicans or just the far right or somebody. They're just calling African American history critical race theory.
Yep.
And they're attempting, apparently, in many, many states, I mean, the obvious ones normally, but Texas, unfortunately, though, too, I think Texas is the one that sort of sets the textbooks for everybody else.
Yeah.
They're trying to take African American history just out of it now, as I think it's a backlash to this 1618 project,
yes,
which is really unfortunate. And I'm not really sure what to do actually at this point to fight that. I suppose the creators and writers for the 1618 project would probably be the people to ask for that. I wish there was an easy answer on that one.
The only thing I can say is if you do have children in school, to monitor what they're learning, and supplement what they're learning if they're not learning what they need to learn. Also, you can obviously talk to their teachers and the school board.
I wouldn't even you can monitor what they're learning. I mean, I would say the main thing is to teach them all that sort of stuff, regardless.
Because how many other things we have to teach our children that they're not getting in school anyways? I mean, school is not everything that you need to know and to be a human.
Right.
Yeah,
you got to teach them stuff. You just you got to assume the school is not going to teach them anything about anything really. For that sort of stuff, cultural and stuff like that. I mean, at the rate they're banning books in schools and stuff too, it's just like, all right. It seems like you just gotta Anyway. So that's that.
It's really unfortunate too, because at the beginning of, if you watch the thing on Hulu there, the 1619 Project on Hulu, she starts out talking about how she, as a person growing up, did not know where her place was in American history, in society, and until a teacher gave her the information about, the first African Americans that came here was 1619, not after the country was formed. And so to have this end up ballooning into a huge thing where they take more history out of things is really sad, actually.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what's happening everywhere.
No.
I think that she's trying to just completely change how we look at it and how we look at ourselves as a country, which is actually a massive, massive, massive undertaking. And there's always going to be backlash to something like that. I don't think that conservative forces are going to win that battle. I do think that progressive voices will win in the end. I still firmly believe that that's just the arc of history. You know what I mean? It's just Ben's progressive.
I think it's an uphill battle for Indians and brown people, for them to get their history more known. I think that it's just part of what this country was founded on. It's integral into if you talk about Indians, and by Indians I mean Native Americans, or black people, both of those people are the reasons this country exists. I mean, if our history is really told, it delegitimizes things.
I think we were just talking about this a little while ago outside of the podcast, and we were just talking about the history of race, where race really comes from. And as far as I'm aware, it is sort of an invention by the Spanish and Portuguese that was used to originally in their colonies to sort of decide who's in charge of who. But there was massive racial hierarchy charts that they used to make the Spanish and stuff like that, like where they'd have like the European-born colonial governor person is on the top, and then the half European, half Indian person is below that, and then there's the half African, half European person, the half Indian, half African, half, you know what I mean? And then like it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And like this whole like this system, a hierarchy, like a grid, like you're supposed to, it's completely insane. But I think that's like the basis of just like racism, right, in the modern world. But then what happened was our system actually, I guess, is a lot different than that. I suppose America really just had like not two groups, but just really like you're either in with the Anglo settlers, you're off the Mayflower, or you're not, right? So you're one of the English, and you're not. You know what I mean? So it's almost like a bipolar, a two-sided, system that has been very successful, really, at absorbing other groups slowly but steadily throughout the centuries. So like at one point the Irish were they were in the out group. They were never going to be considered American white people, right? But eventually, they included them. They never included the Italians, right? Now they would be included.
Yep.
They, then I think you could probably say the same now maybe for Cuban Americans.
Yep.
You could say the same now for a lot of other more recent immigrant groups, that they're slowly in the process of becoming white. Even if they're not considered all the way white yet, they probably will be, another 100 years or whatever. Yep. But I think that, like we were just talking about, that's like the two groups who will never be that, right? Are African Americans and Indigenous people. They're never going to be white. Because that's the institutional racism, right? That's baked right into the foundation of our entire system. The slaves, the descendants of slaves, really. And the descendants of Indigenous people.
The lie of America was built on stolen land by stolen people. And that's
good. I like that. That's very, very good.
That's why
the
institutions just are even built so that we never ever get equality completely. We're never going to be completely equal. The reparations, I don't know if that'll ever happen for African Americans, or equal treatment for Native Americans.
What would solve this? That's my question. How can you solve this without burning the whole damn thing to the ground and starting over? Let's try to figure this out, because there has to be a way to figure it out, without hurting people. And if you're going to burn it to the ground, people are going to get hurt.
Number one, all the groups will tell you is teach the truth. Teach the truth. If everybody now agrees that, yes, this did happen, the country was stolen from Indians and built by African American slaves, okay, we start from there. We admit it, we start from there. Then we can rebuild things better. We cannot rebuild things unless we're honest about the image of America, where we came from. If we're not honest about our origins, we can never fix it in the future, because honesty is number one. And that's what this whole thing's about. It isn't about guilt tripping the people that are here now. It isn't about any of this. This is institutionalized in our country. It isn't about individuals. It's about the institution of America.
So you're saying you need to if you understand the history, you understand the institutions, and then you can actually properly deal with those institutions. Correct. Because without having that knowledge, you're just going to completely misunderstand.
Truth and reconciliation.
I think that has to do with the police. The police, obviously, there's been a lot of police shootings and brutalities just recently. And some of these are not even racially part of this. You know what I mean? The discussion really, it's more like the police versus anybody. And that goes back to the institution of cops being formed to be fugitive slave catchers, right?
Yep, that's the origin of police, in case you didn't know.
in the United States. Yep. I mean, I'm not going to say it's everywhere, but in the United States, it was their origins. And so, if you understand that, you understand immediately why hey, this is part of that institution's job is to catch and beat the shit out of black men. Like that is literally, that was what they were hired and created. That was what those were created
black
for.
And brown. And it was part of the,
so
that was actually part of, largely, the early police people were out of Irish groups, but that was part of the Irish becoming white.
I know. Yeah, that's true. You're right.
So they won their whiteness by doing that.
Yeah. Well, in a way, it's like they I also think there was another reason why they did that too. They had to give Irish people something to do.
Yep.
In major metropolitan areas like New York, Boston, and stuff like that. Because you ever watch Gangs in New York? Yeah. Like that's a like an example of like they wanted to hire Irish people to be cops to get them out. Make them quote unquote productive members of society, or they'd be run around in gangs or whatever. I don't know if that was really
part of their
that I don't know if that's true, but that was the theory at the time. Like that's
sort of like an assimilation plan for Irish people.
So that you're right. They use one group to beat another group down.
Yep.
Which is depressing as
hell. And the thing of it is, like we were just saying, is Native Americans and African Americans are the ones that are always being stood on.
Yeah, so it does seem like I think we were saying, like every other group that immigrates, it might take hundreds and hundreds of years, but eventually they can become American as apple pie, except two groups, right? If they identify as those two groups, it's just never going to happen. So I just feel like there has to be, okay. So the 1619 Project, maybe that is one of the main reasons why that's a good thing, is trying to find a way to stay true to America and the democracy, and keep the good parts,
right,
and then also be honest about the history, and try not to go back to those times or repeat those mistakes, and try to recognize that some of the institutions that we have might not be healthy, right? So
and really it also to me is trying to reconcile with all of the populations we have here. I mean, and everyone it should have an American dream, right?
Yeah, everybody should get to have their little house on a hill and pick a fence and 2 cars in every garage and everything like that.
Right.
So
we're a diverse society, so we need to deal with the fact that we really are diverse. This is a different population than originally, so that's part of the reconciliation portion of the truth and reconciliation that needs to happen with this country.
Yep. But do you think, just like here, do you think reparations would actually help fix any of that, or would that just be like a silly thing to do?
Here's what I think about that. I think that reparations are important because part of the reason why African Americans live in the situations they do in this country is because their wealth was stolen. I mean, look at Black Wall Street.
So, like,
their labor was stolen.
Like the Watchmen show, which if anybody ever has not watched it, you must watch the Watchmen TV show on HBO. It came out a couple of years ago. In that's like an alternate timeline to ours, and in that anybody who was descended from people who lived through the Tulsa race riots, any African Americans who were descended from people who got reparations.
Yep.
And that's a great. I actually agree with that. That's something we should have done a long time ago, and it's not without merit. From what I understand, they gave survivors survivors from the Japanese concentration camps in World War II reparations, and they won that court battle or whatever it was in the 80s. Or I'm not even sure if it was a court battle or if it was just a legislative decision. Maybe Congress passed, but they got a lot of money, right? And because they had everything taken from them during World War II, everything.
Yep.
And this would be another example. It goes back further to the 20s or 1920, right? And or maybe it was 1919. 1919.
It's around there.
Yeah. That's where everything, like black wealth, that started to come about, like was just stolen.
Yep. Just
straight up and like burned to the ground. So.
And then that doesn't even account for also the obvious labor
Oh, no. Yeah, we're just talking about very specific,
that's even more
easily,
recent,
almost like an example. Like this is something they could do relatively easily without actually having to do, without costing the government an unheard of sum of money. Like I think if they wanted to give like every descendant of slavery reparations, that would cost the government trillions at this point. God knows. If they had 40 acres and a mule, each single person, and then like left at their family, if you'd have to put it at, you could adjust for inflation and what they would have done with that land if they would have invested money they would have got from that land. I mean, it could be tons and tons of money. So I mean, I'm not saying that that's actually a realistic proposition necessarily.
I think it's totally realistic.
Okay.
I think it's totally realistic because we spent a lot of money rebuilding Japan after Hiroshima, dude. We can do it. We can do it. We've done it before. We could rebuild a society. We can make it better.
We should.
We can do this as a country.
Okay. I'm not against it at all. I feel
the first thing needs to happen is the finger needs to be taken off from these scales so that things can equalize, like housing and jobs and all these things. I totally believe in reparations. I do.
I believe it. I definitely believe in reparations, at least like starting at least on the smaller scale to at least prove it can work.
How about this? First one, all African Americans get free college.
Have proof of concept. That would be very easy.
That would increase wealth immediately.
Yeah,
it would change.
Right. Why don't we just make college free for everybody?
It should be. But I'm saying.
It's like that's.
But what I'm saying is that isn't like a direct tax dollar cost immediately. Yeah. That would not be. That would be one way of doing that. Right. Housing assistance. They did that for GIs, back in the day. They could do it for African Americans too.
Right. All right. So I think overall reparations are a good idea.
Me too.
I think that they would promote equality across the board in this country. It might be somewhat of a solution. It's not a solution, but it might be like a. I'm trying to think of it this way: like it's a bridge we can both cross. Like everybody can kind of go across this bridge together and keep this country alive and keep it going. It's a way to, instead of disrupting the United States in a way, it's a way of preserving the United States, because it's sort of like it's meaningless in a way, but it's sort of an apology, I suppose, by the institutions for the misdeeds of the past.
Right.
There's nothing that's going to make it right, but it's something. It's just something. And I don't know. That's just how I feel. It's not even, I don't know. That's how I feel. My straight white male ass. I just,
It just has to be some truth before the reconciliation.
Yeah, you're right. And I feel like what's happened is the whole debate has gone back to square one. Now we're just like questioning whether our society is questioning whether we should even take African American history, have African American history, have any sort of external voices, from the mainstream. And that's only in certain parts of the country, I guess, but it's still very, very annoying. It seems to be dominating the news.
It's like a wedge issue now to use to further divide people. And what we need to do is not divide people. We need to not call everybody a racist. What we need to do is just come to the truth of how the country was founded so we can move on.
I blame the media on this. I feel like the media likes to pick up on stuff like this.
I think so too.
They're playing the game too. Mm-hmm. I actually think that CNN is just as much to blame sometimes as Fox News, as much as I don't, and NPR is just as much to blame too.
Yep.
They'll pick up some of these stories about stuff like this and they'll just run with it without considering the implications or the I guess implication isn't really the right word. The ramifications, I guess. Right. The ramifications of what they're doing. They're just like, this is a crazy story. We got to run with this critical race theory story. And then they get everybody all mad about it. And then it's just like, when it wasn't even anything that anybody should even be talking about below the graduate level.
Right.
Below having a master's degree.
I really think that the media needs to stay the heck off from Twitter and stop getting their stories from there.
Yeah.
I bet you that's where they heard about it to begin with somehow.
Yeah, I agree with you.
They just need to stop.
If you're trying to dumb it down, the Twitter is a good place to do that. And that's where, Anyway.
Yeah.
I think we want to move on, though, to a different subject slightly here. Largely, we were talking about macro stuff, so you're talking about more of different. I'll let you go to.
Okay,
yep.
So in the last couple days, it came to light in the news that Nathan Chasinghorse was arrested for sex trafficking. And Nathan Chasinghorse played Smiles a lot in Dances with Wolves. He was that little boy in Dances with Wolves. Anyways, he has been touted across the country, after that, as he put himself forward as a medicine person, that he could speak to the Creator and do all kinds of healing miracles. And he had quite the following, and he had made he did a lot of talks at a lot of different reservations across the country. I met him when I was 18. I went to an event at Northern Michigan University where they were trying to recruit Native kids. He was a speaker there. I remember him being very, everybody was awestruck for one thing, because it wasn't long after the movie had came out, so star power, right? But I did get this weird feeling about prickly skin, because he's a very intense person. He looks you very much in the eye when he's talking to you. He's very good at wooing girls. I mean, all the girls were just following him around like puppies. But anyways, so the thing about this story is that I wanted to focus on is this is an issue, and I see it as an issue not in just Native American communities, but I've seen it in my own community too, with churches, with having people purport to be the only one that can talk to the Creator or whatever, and you need that intermediary or whatnot, and then abusing that position. In this case, he was sex trafficking young girls. I've seen similar situations, and even people that were purported in our church that my dad was part of when I grew up. Their church that he belonged to, there were several people that were leaders in the church that were domestic violence abusers. I mean, I think that we need to protect our women more, and I think that women on the reservation, you need to talk out. You need to speak out about the men that are like this. We can't have people like this in our communities. I'm glad that Fort Peck banished him a few years ago from being on the reservation at all.
Yeah,
that was a great
apparently
move.
Deservedly so.
Yep.
He's in jail.
Mm-hmm. He's currently in jail. Yep, he's incarcerated at the moment, waiting trial. But I would just say that I know that this happens a lot. I've heard whispers. When you're a woman, you hear things from other women like, don't let your daughters be in a room alone with that guy. Don't let that person go into a sweat lodge with this person. Don't trust this person. And a lot of times the persons involved have really well-known family names in Indian country, or they're in a position spiritually that they do ceremonies and stuff like that, and or their family members do, and so they get trust based on that, and then they abuse that trust. And I think that it's imperative that we as women start actually standing up, and when things happen, press charges, believe women when they say it, no matter what the last name of the person is. So I am glad that he's arrested and he can't do this anymore to anyone else. I don't really care that he's an actor or not. He comes from a very prominent spiritual leader family. So that would be why the respect was automatically given to him. Is because of his uncle.
I see.
So.
I think that that's the only thing I want to add to that is it seems like why do men, when given, it's almost like when you give, this is sad, and it seems to be a repeat of any type of story involving any kind of priest, actually, or anything like that. Men who are given absolute authority over, whoever, people around them, tend to, apparently, not all the time, but it seems like they're the people in these stories a lot of times that'll end up abusing their authority. Yep. And it's just like, man, like, where's their character? You know what I mean? Like, they're entrusted basically with
these people's well-being.
They trust you. Right. Yeah, I assume it's like I'm sure it's way different than a priest, but I'm just.
Well, I think that all of
this similar type of situation where the community has given him a lot of trust. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to trust you with our feelings, our emotions, our young ones, everybody. You know what I mean? And then he completely took advantage of that.
Yep.
It's just like, geez, dude.
Yeah, it's like. When I have talked to women that have been abused in these situations, and it's like abuse on another level, because you have sexual abuse that happens, and then you also have spiritual abuse. So then they feel like they can't even trust their own thoughts. They can never trust anybody again. Do they have a relationship with their creator or not? Who should they trust with their spiritual matters that they need help with? I mean, it is on a whole other level.
Yeah.
And I know not everyone believes in those beliefs, but whatever you believe in, you got to be careful about putting too much authority in anyone. And I just want to say out there, we're all special beings the Creator made, and everyone has an equal voice to pray in any way. In your manner of praying, you don't need an intermediary. You can do it yourself. Never put that much trust in another person.
I know, and that seems to be the foundation of many religions, unfortunately, is to put that much trust on another person. But you shouldn't. I know what you mean. And, like, that's the problem. You need to have faith in yourself.
Yep, have faith in yourself.
Yeah.
And I will be putting down tobacco for these women out there, not just the ones in this case, but everyone that's suffering silently right now because they feel like they can't say anything, or they've tried to say anything and people have shut them up because of the family that the people belong to. So I am going to definitely put up prayers for you all. I just thought that was really important. I don't really care about his, like I said, his fancy actor stuff. This is an issue I've seen repeatedly in my lifetime with both Christian church, priesthoods, even Boy Scout leaders. People trust their kids with Boy Scout leaders, and that was has been...
That's been a mess, yeah.
A mess too, and so we just need to really, really be careful about who we trust, and never give anybody too much authority.
If somebody claims to have all the answers,
they don't.
Immediately.
It's a lie.
That makes them highly suspect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think so too. No one has all the answers. Mm-mm. It seems like that's where people are most vulnerable, especially when it comes to spiritual stuff. The religious stuff. People are really vulnerable, and they're really searching for somebody who has answers. And that's what, if somebody like him comes along and claims to have those answers, it's just boy, it's so easy for somebody like that to take advantage of people, young women or whatever.
Right,
in
because
this case, I guess, but yeah.
Think about it. The pastors, priests, and medicine men, they all deal with, if someone's sick. If someone has lost someone, they deal with grief. They deal with coming of age ceremonies. Mm-hmm. They deal with all of these things. And those are deeply, deeply personal things for people. And they really have to trust the person that's doing those. So just never put your trust in someone else. Always keep your eyes open.
You should trust people. I don't think that. You should trust other humans. I mean, that's not... But I mean...
Not in absolute.
Absolutely.
That's what I mean. Not in absolute.
Absolute. Don't just... let somebody else run your life. That's the idea, right? That's it. Yep. And it seems like that's all too common of a theme with this. In these situations.
So,
Anything else?
I just wanted to mention that. I think that we covered everything pretty well.
We could talk about this little story that you mentioned earlier really quick before we're almost done here. But I want to mention the organ donation story. Apparently, in Massachusetts, the legislature there is possibly going to be passing a bill allowing prisoners to get time off their sentences if they donate organs. Mm-hmm. I don't know how legit this story is or anything, but you said it was in The Guardian, right?
Yep.
So, and that's completely a clusterfuck. When I first heard it, I immediately assumed either Latin America or China or something.
It could be the U.S.
It did not occur to me to think that would be happening in the United States. Shouldn't surprise me, however. That shouldn't surprise me at all. But that is. So that's just saying that justice really has jack shit all to do with anything.
Right.
It's just really about whatever is most convenient. It has nothing to do with the actual crime.
And I would even go into this, like, okay, so in some Latin American countries, I'm sure that you could, if you had money, you could just buy off bribes. So now in the United States, poor people can bribe their sentences to be lowered with their organs.
Money isn't enough.
Now let's just talk about prison health care in the first place is not very good. In regular prison, it is not very good. You may go along with, having health issues and not getting them addressed. So that's the thing. Number two, like... They were spinning this in the article. I mean, the ones that came up with this were saying it was a positive thing to give them back their bodily autonomy and allow them to be able to do this if they wanted to, and to recognize their decision by, commuting some of their sentence off. But, it's like they're so Pollyanna, they don't understand how that could be abused. Seriously. It's like, I can see prisoners just having everything harvested and be sorry, see you later, bye. I don't trust that. I think it's a horrible idea. I think that in the United States, being the most incarcerated population of Black and brown people, it's preying on a certain population of our country that's mostly the most incarcerated, the poor people. I mean, I just think this is horrible. I think it's a bad idea, and I think people need to pay attention more on these other laws that necessarily don't make the front page.
Yeah, maybe they should be paying attention to how we treat obviously there's a famous quote about how you can judge a society by how it treats its lowliest citizens or whatever, and that's the people in prison. I think would definitely be the lowliest at this point, and we don't treat them very well.
No,
that's sad.
Yeah, and prisoners can be used as slaves too.
Technically, yes. There's nothing stopping that. You're right.
And that's horrible, and that needs to be changed. That should definitely be changed.
I agree.
And I think that we need to really take a look at ourselves on how we treat them when they get out too, because people that have felonies, your life is over. Try to find a job after that. It's on your record. You can't even find places to live. People will assume you were a murderer or something, and maybe you weren't. Maybe it was a drug felony or something. I don't know. I don't know all the legal system things that you can get. But anyways, we need to look at reform for after they get out. Ways they can, if they've paid their debt to society, why can't they have a life and vote and do other things when they come back out? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
So why are they still punished until they die? It makes no sense.
Right.
So anyways, that was crazy.
Yep. Anyway, two. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but thanks for the story there anyway. Especially about Nathan chasing Horace. That's really sad. Hopefully he gets some help. Too.
Yep.
I doubt he probably wants any right now, but maybe he just doesn't see that, And
I want to say a point about this too. When people do this kind of thing, it isn't, I don't think, out of the blue. I think that the amount of grooming they're talking about in that article that he had done is something that's a learned thing. And I think that a lot of the abuse that happened during boarding school and the intergenerationally passed down situation has a lot to do with the abuse of women in Native country and Indian country, because this was not part of our culture before that, and now we've got people like this. So that needs to be addressed. And again, truth and reconciliation.
It's just, like, so sad. It is like he went from being a hero to being just the villain, literally the villain. And
Right.
if you look at it, like if you look up the story, I looked at his mug shot. He doesn't even look like the same person. He literally looks just like a supervillain. It's just like, oh my god, fuck, years have been hard on him, man. He looks like he's done all the drugs. You know, and he probably has. I mean, it's just... I'm not trying to feel bad for him, actually, and I didn't mean to come off that way at all. I feel a lot worse for his victims than him. I'm just trying to figure out a way that maybe something could help. You know, I don't know. But...
I don't think you came off like that at all. Like, I don't think that he shouldn't get punished. But what I'm saying is in order to prevent more future abuse from happening, we need to address the problem that started it in the first place and get mental health services out to everyone on the reservations.
Yeah, like this shouldn't even... People have been reporting this quicker, too, if he was doing something a long time ago. Like, this shouldn't have taken years and years and years and years and years.
Banishment, and then he just started it up in Nevada.
Yeah, just went out somewhere else,
Yeah,
like,
so it's...
Anyway. Oh, man. Fun stuff. I try to think of anything to end on a more positive note.
I think we can end it on, well, I don't know. Do you want to talk about balloons?
Oh, yeah, the China Balloon.
Yeah.
Everybody can go watch the China Balloon on your local news station. Let's see where the China Balloon is today. See where the China Balloon goes tomorrow. That's really funny.
Oh, my gosh.
It's not funny at all. The China shouldn't be spying on us, I guess, but it is kind of funny in a way.
I like that we didn't shoot it down because I feel like it's like... That is like a little kid kicking you in the knee, you know, and we're just like, whatever.
It's actually kind of a welcome distraction. Yeah, I know.
It's like, oh, that's so cute of you.
It's like there's some sort of supervillain out there plotting our destruction or something like that. Like, we haven't even realized you're even really there. Like, now oh, wow. Yeah.
Are they going to fight a war with the Hindenburg next? I don't know.
Maybe. All right. On that note, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Hopefully, we'll get another one made here in the next couple months. Happy African American History Month, and hopefully everybody has a nice learning experience this month on something or other.
Happy 30th episode.
30th episode. That's
Cheers.
True. Yep. Yay, we made it 30 episodes. I can't believe it, actually, still.
Neither.
I never would have even, but anyway. Yep, there's still, I'm trying to think of, like, if we should, like, work on, like, a logo, or, like, I was talking about a logo website. We need to do a logo website, all those billion things.
Yeah, and it all takes babysitters and time.
Yeah, it all takes babysitters, so, yeah, we should kind of get working on that more probably. But this is just it's so much fun to do this. So. All right, on that note, then Bama P. Gawabaman.